Okay. So, yes, the other day, Keemstar actually reached out to me. It had nothing to do with this, but let me just give you a quick story. He reached out to me and he said, "Yo." I said, "What's up?" Whatever. We had a little conversation. Basically, the first thing he told me is that that young 10-year-old girl actually had passed away, which is incredibly unfortunate. He let me know that. But we talked about he asked me if I was interested in writing like an article for Drama Alert if I'm something that's I'm very passionate about. So I said I'd consider it. I am thinking about it. Then while we were having that, after that, he showed me this here, and he said like, "Hey, this is disgusting. You know, can you look into this?" So I was like, "Okay." Uh, so I said, "Sure." Now I'm gonna say to Keemstar, you're probably not gonna be super thrilled with my perspective on this. But this is a concept. This is something we've talked about a couple times on this channel, and it's something I think is very important. And if you're watching this video, watch it all the way through. To anybody who watches it, if you don't want to do that, just turn it off, because this is like a very nuanced conversation that we have to have. So this YouTuber here posted this. Apparently, this is the guy. I personally never heard of him. That's, again, it's not an insult. I don't know a lot of YouTubers, whatnot. And he made this tweet here. He made a tweet. This is him. His profile picture keeps changing. He said, "Having basic empathy for non-offending pedophiles will ultimately lead to less child abuse. The fact that this take is controversial is a sad reminder that we still live in an intellectual dark age." Then somebody said, "What does non-offending mean? Never touched a kid, never looked at CP. If you're into kids, there's only one solution. We would assume that's off to the island." That's what we say here. You try to be at least a little palatable. And then the guy said, non-offending means that we understand breaking the existing laws is a no-no. Okay. So, Keemstar, obviously, like, listen, anytime we talk about this type of stuff, when we talk like, pedophiles specifically, the first reaction is to get like, very angry and very defensive, and it's completely understandable. And it is a perspective that I used to hold, and I still do hold for the most part. However, it is a common theme on this channel that my wife is a behavioral specialist. She does specialize in like adults with disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, and traumatic brain injuries. But she also has some experience with like pedophiles that are classified in the DSM, like actually diagnosed. And a conversation we had a while ago opened me up to this. Ultimately, it is true that if we see, I don't like the term basic human empathy. This is the problem I have with this, is that it's a hot take. It's not a palatable take where I could probably sit here and even if you disagree with what I'm going to say, you're going to be like, I get what you're saying. This is a hot take. This is like an insulting take. So first and foremost, we don't need to have any empathy for pedophiles. Sorry, I don't give a shit. I don't fucking care. I do care about the children though, right? That's what I care about. And ultimately creating and I don't want to say safer space, creating a more comfortable space for people who are attracted to kids to come forward to get help before they harm a child will cause less abuse on children, right? That's the reality of the situation. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality of the situation, okay? So basically, first and foremost, something that we should understand is that nobody chooses to be attracted to children. We don't really make choices on a lot of the things that we're attracted to in general. You lost the lottery on that one when you're attracted to kids. Also, oftentimes people who are attracted to children were molested themselves when they were younger. And I bring this up because inherently it doesn't make you a bad person. Being attracted to children is 100% bad, but it doesn't make you a bad person for being attracted. It makes you a horrible, morally deplorable piece of shit if you act on that. Right? So the idea is, okay, if somebody has this attraction, if we can create enough, if we can reduce the stigma on people who are attracted to children, enough for them to feel comfortable coming forward to see a therapist so that they can manage their urges and not harm a child, that is ultimately what we need to do. Now, what we say non-offending, offending pedophiles, I don't care. They can go, they can go off to the island, we'll say. But because once you cross that line, I don't care. Even if you can be reformed, I don't care because you're worthless to me. But if you haven't offended, if you're able to move forward and see like a therapist again, etc., it can help you and get help. There's a lower chance that you're going to actually harm the children. So actually, it has a positive impact. Now, what does this mean for us? Not a whole lot. As the average everyday person, we don't really need to do a whole lot, and to be all honest with you. However, therapists need to be more open and understanding about this. So there needs to be more education on, MAPS, minor attracted people. I know it sounds preposterous, but and not like it's not a sexuality. Let's be clear about that. It's not like a part of the LGBTQ. I'm just using the term because pedophile is very stigmatized and like, my point. Yeah, it's therapists that have to deal with it. That's the reality. Now, you may disagree with me, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. Ultimately, I don't care. I have no empathy for pedophiles. I have empathy for the children getting abused. We want to reduce abuse. If we decide to go around the streets with a paddle and just start killing all pedophiles, what ends up happening is that people that are attracted to children are still going to exist. They're just not going to come forward and get help. So you understand what I'm saying? So they're going to like end up not being able to control their urges or possibly, and then they're going to offend. Meanwhile, again, reinforcing, if they go and get therapy, they can get help. So that's where I'm coming from. Now, the problem I have with this, and so this is correct for the most part, but the wording is very antagonistic and it's intentional. It's a hot take. I've seen this all over the place. People come in here and they throw out hot takes on Twitter because they want to be edgy and they think that they're right. And they're like, well, I know that it was a dick way to say something, but I'm correct. Anytime we deal with like children and shit like this, people don't have like a whole lot of like room for a lot of empathy, which is totally understandable. I totally get it, right? But this is not a conversation that you throw around like a fucking hot take because you're getting people to tune out of the conversation instantly. Nobody wants to listen to you if you're going to be like, we need to have empathy for people who like children. We don't need to. We do need to make a societal shift for like therapists specifically, right? And the fact that this take is controversial is a sad reminder we still live in an intellectual dark age. So what you're saying is that you're fucking stupid if you don't agree with him. That's what he's saying. It's antagonistic. Nobody's going to be like, oh, you're right. No, you're not educating anybody here. This is for him and whatever audience he has that like already understands this basic concept and possibly people who want to fuck kids. So to be honest here, you need to say the right thing. Here's how I would have said. The unfortunate reality is that if we listen, here's what I would say. I would say, first and foremost, the unfortunate reality is that nobody chooses to be attracted to children. And as long as they haven't harmed a child, I think that we should create a safe space for them to come forward and get help before they harm more children, because it will have a net outcome or an outcome of having a net reduction in child abuse. That's how I would say it. Not super antagonistic. It's not like an empathetic take on people who are attracted to kids. It's just the way that I perceive the world, and I'm looking to have less child abuse, right? So then we have the typical response. People's like, oh, they should basically die. That's the typical response, and I understand it. But again, like, we have to have like a deeper understanding of it, and I get it. I understand why it would be hard to, because nobody wants to do that. But ultimately, if your I understand why your first reaction would be to have moral outrage. But if you are more concerned with being angry at people attracted to children, rather than trying to make less children get predatorized, I think you need to reevaluate yourself. You need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and go, okay, you have to put your personal frustrations aside for a second and go like, okay, what is best for children? Because ultimately, your frustrations come from children getting harmed. And so since we want to reduce that, you have to go like, what's the right way to proceed? What's like the most pragmatic way to proceed, excuse me. And then I know a lot of people are giving him shit because he said non-offending pedophiles mean that we understand breaking the existing laws is a no-no. Okay, so like again, antagonistic. This is meant to come off. Now it's quite possible he identifies as a map, whatever. But it's most likely he's just trying to be a condescending dick that's trying to have a hot take where he's like, not offending means that we, the intelligent people, understand breaking the existing laws is a no-no, right? So that's my take on this. Keemstar's reaction, in my opinion, is like I honestly like I disagree with where he's coming from, but I totally understand it because I used to be this guy, and I still want to be this guy. It's just like after being educated on it, I have to be like, okay, Like, what's the right thing to do, you know? And that's one of the things. That's what you have to do. And so I don't blame Keemstar for his perspective, but again, you know, this is a very nuanced conversation. I don't think a lot of people are really ready for it. It's a very difficult subject to approach, and you really need to do it the right way. And I think that anybody who does that, and this is the interesting thing, I understand Keemstar's perspective and most of your perspectives, so I don't blame you for it. That's like the status quo societal perspective on it. If you want to have this conversation, which Vito apparently wants to have, you need to be intelligent about it, and you need to be very palatable about it and very careful, because like this is not an easy topic to get people to open their minds up to. And if you do it in the wrong way, you're just going to push people farther away, right? If your argument, and which would be mine, is that if we create make it easier for people to come forward to therapists and get the help they need before they offend, like you're understanding like, hey, that has a more positive impact on children. But like this way of having a conversation about it turns people away from the conversation. This person is, by all that logic, actually having a negative impact on children. This person is actually just making the conversation worse. Because again, he's viewing things through like the YouTube like hot take, like look at me, I'm edgy and I'm a smart guy. A guy thinks he's smart, and he might be a very intelligent person on paper, but like socially completely fucking stupid when it comes to something like this. And they're using this more. They're using this more for as an attention getter of like, hey, look at me, I'm smart. Like, oh, I want to have the conversation. I want to bait you into the conversation. Didn't really work out that well. Twitter's not a great way to just sit there and have a conversation of this shit. It's a fucking dumb place to do that. Yeah. So if somebody said Vito's a troll and says dumb shit to piss people off. Yeah. I mean, I think that like he's serious about this, but not the right way. Doesn't have a positive. It's not a positive thing. It's not a positive way to have a conversation about it. Someone said Keem is also a dad, and his opinion could be influenced. Well, of course. Yeah. No, absolutely. Again, I understand why Keemstar and most people feel the way that they feel. It is a normal human thing, and I've totally been there. I've been there too. It wasn't until very recently that I've been like, okay, I understand. And even now, the perspective I told you makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it, but like we're looking at what's the best thing to do for children, and that would be to operate in this capacity and like, you know, make people be able to get help they need before they harm a child. And also understand that a lot of these people who are attracted to children were, you know, there it really is like a correlation for some of them between them getting, you know, molested as children as well. It's just a hard conversation to have. And I do see it happening more and more in the more like social political space on YouTube. But even then, it's in such a negative way, and that nobody's going to like look at it and go like, okay, I understand what you're saying, even if I disagree. Most of the time, like, what is it, the Mr. Girl guy? He tries to talk about this, but that guy makes joke like a lot. He has like an entire platform off of making a lot of weird pedophile jokes. And it's like, you know, it's not exactly the most palatable thing to do. It's like, oh, I want to have a really nuanced conversation about people attracted to kids and how we could have a better outcome for children not getting molested, and then make like a bunch of like, you know, like weird jokes about kids. Like, it's bizarre. And like, listen, I made an inappropriate joke on TikTok, you know, to ironically try to expose somebody who's potentially sleeping with a child, right? I talk about it all the time. I made the joke, if she's old enough to bleed, she's old enough to breed. Thank you very much, Andre Lopez, for the advice. Because at the time there was allegations that Andre Lopez at 23 slept with a 14-year-old. Trying to call that out, misfired. People either didn't know who he was, couldn't hear the end. People that didn't like me took it out of context. It was a fucking mess. But you should learn very quickly that people don't really appreciate these types of jokes. Which, you know, message received. You know what I'm saying? Even if my intentions were to try to, like, bring attention to it, not the right way to go. But, you know, creating a platform off of this kind of fucking shit obviously is not going to make you the most credible person in the entire world. People are very sensitive to this, understandably so. We have to understand that as a society, the way we operate, being a child molester is worse than being a murderer. You can try to disagree, but you just can't, because literal murderers in jail will kill you if you're a pedophile, but they won't kill other murderers. Like, we know that harming a child is worse than killing somebody. Like, that is just the way society operates. You can disagree, but you're just wrong. Our societal values, generally speaking, puts children getting harmed above adults getting murdered. I don't even disagree, but you know, you understand what I'm saying, okay? So you gotta make sure you're very sensitive to this topic when you're trying to have this conversation. Hey, Pop, I hate to sound like an idiot, but what does the word palatable mean in this context? Oh, dude, don't even worry about it. I don't know what words mean all the time. Palatable just means like, yeah, you know, you can you can eat it. It's like digestible. So if I want to give you a more palatable message, I'll make it easier for you to hear. So like, let's say I hit your car with a brick, right? I could go around and be like, hey, you fucking idiot. I just smashed your fucking car with a brick, asshole. That's not super palatable. But if I go, hey, listen, man, I'm really sorry. I'll pay for the damage before you even say it. But I did hit your car with a brick. I'm really sorry again. That's a more palatable way of telling you I hit your car, you know? So that's what we talk about when we talk about palatability. That's it. But don't be ashamed of that at all, bro. Like, I don't know what words mean either all the time. Yeah, I think that's not to go on a tangent, but that's just what I do. I think that we really need to break the stigma of like, why not ask people words that they don't understand? I hate that. You know, for me, I used to work at like a bus company, so I work with a lot of like, you know, I worked with a lot of people from El Salvador, and they didn't understand everything I was saying. Right? Sometimes I'd say words, and they would say like, "Hey, what does that mean?" That's totally fine. I'd be like, "Oh, sorry," and then I would explain what the word means, and I would try not to use like a word that would be like out of their vocabulary. And it's not condescending to try to like make sure you can properly communicate with somebody. You know what I'm saying? They were migrants from El Salvador. They by the way, they were good. They spoke English very well considering that. But there's just some words that they don't understand. So like they'd ask questions. It's like a perfectly normal thing that we should do. Like it doesn't make you unintelligent because you don't understand what a word means. I think that like that's a problem too, because sometimes in this online space, people will use really like inflated words. They'll use like big words, like boom bap, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You don't need to use those words. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not helping yourself communicate with me. It's about communication. So yeah,